Nepal. Friendly people, breathtaking culture, and big, big mountains. Gateway to the Himalayas and home to two of the world's most iconic mountain treks, the Annapurna Circuit and the Everest Base Camp Trek. But which one should you choose? In this video, we will carefully break down and explain the differences between them and offer our personal expert recommendations to help you make the right choice. Let's begin by saying that both the Annapurna Circuit and Everest Base Camp Trek are drop-dead gorgeous. These are two of the most iconic mountain treks anywhere in the world, and for good reason. The Annapurna Circuit is renowned and loved for its wonderful variety. The plant life and terrain are more diverse and arguably a little more vibrant than the EBC Trek. Subtropical forests give way to icy mountain passes, lakes, and apple orchards. You cross from expansive valleys and rice paddies to semi-desert in a matter of days, so you rarely gain a sense of change as you journey through these mountains. Whereas in the EBC Trek, you reach high altitude sooner, so the vegetation and villages quickly feel more sparse and weathered after day 4 or 5. Much of the trail is therefore marked by rocky mountain paths, icy rivers, glaciers, shrubs, and occasional patches of forest. Does this make the EBC Trek less visually appealing? No, not at all. This is central to its charm, because as you pass through these weathered landscapes, surrounded by many of Earth's tallest peaks, you can't help but feel like you're on top of the world. Both treks expose you to a big dose of Nepali Himalayan culture. Think ancient stone villages, mist-shrouded temples, tasty local food, and an older way of life. The Annapurna Mountains are home to numerous ethnic groups. Hindu people predominantly inhabit the subtropical lowlands, whilst Buddhists and people of Tibetan ancestry live at higher altitudes. Amongst these many ethnic groups, you have the Chetri, Brahims, Manangi, Magar, and Takali. These groups all look different, dress differently, and speak different languages. Along the EBC Trek, in what is known as the Khumbu region of Nepal, you find the Sherpa ethnic group. You have probably heard of the Sherpas before. They have become synonymous with extreme mountaineering and for their invaluable contribution to the early exploration of the Himalayas and Mount Everest as master guides and porters, a proud tradition they continue to this day. The general consensus is that the local communities and culture found along the Annapurna Circuit feels more untouched, more varied, and arguably more authentic. Mount Everest has been attracting foreigners for almost a century, so a lot of the life along the trail is now geared towards servicing trekkers, which means it can feel a little more developed touristically in that sense, especially in the earlier sections of the trek. But what the EBC might lack comparatively in unspoiled local culture, it makes up for an incredible history. It was in these very valleys, villages, and mountain trails that Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay passed to reach the summit of Mount Everest all those years ago. There is great beauty and symbolism in following in their footsteps. Whilst both offer a fantastic array of highlights and experiences along your journey, the EBC Trek is richer and arguably more impressive in standalone highlights. To name a few, you'll cross Hillary Bridge, an epic suspension bridge suspended 125 meters above an icy ravine. Take tea or lunch at the Hotel Everest View, a luxury hotel perched at a record-breaking 3,888 meters with spectacular views across Mount Everest. Visit Tengboche Monastery, one of the Himalayas' most impressive Buddhist temples that dates back to 1916. The Dude Koshi River and Khumbu Glacier, the highest river and glacier in the world respectively, and Kala Patthar, a windswept peak situated directly across from Mount Everest, offering unparalleled views of the mountain. And not to mention Everest Base Camp itself, which is a bucket list topping experience in its own right. Along the Annapurna Circuit, you will encounter Muktinath Temple, an ancient pilgrimage site sitting at the base of Thorongla Pass. You will climb Thorongla Pass itself, your greatest challenge of the trek at 5,416 meters, offering spectacular views across the Annapurna mountain range. You can take a day trip to Tel, also known as the Ice Lake, a high-altitude lake surrounded by some of Earth's highest peaks. And finally, whilst technically not on the EBC hiking trail, almost everybody will finish their trek in Pokhara, a lakeside gem that is brimming with water sports and cafes, and the perfect place to unwind after your trek in the mountains. For both treks, you will stay in what are known as tea houses. These are essentially small guest houses often found in small villages or settlements along the trail. They are the cornerstone of rural accommodation in Nepal. They're basic but cozy and usually consist of twin bedrooms upstairs with a communal space/restaurant downstairs, where people eat, chat and play cards besides a crackling fire. You will sleep in your sleeping bag on a thin mattress in an unheated room at night. Amenities usually include charging sockets, very basic internet, hot showers, cooked food, running water and toilets. However, the higher up you climb, showers and hot water are not always a given. Whilst the differences are really quite minimal, some argue that the accommodation along Annapurna Circuit feels a little more homely, but marginally less comfortable and with fewer amenities, more like a family-run homestay and less like a hotel or refined guest house. Along the EBC Trek, on the other hand, it's not uncommon to find newly constructed, purpose-built tea houses with dozens of rooms. Not surprising considering the allure and draw Mount Everest has had for many decades. But having said this, bear in mind that most travelers will have a very similar accommodation experience on both treks. Yes, there are slight differences on average, but they should not be exaggerated. And every tea house is different, let's not forget, so you will likely find a bit of everything. So just how easy is it to get to and from each trek? Most international visitors to Nepal begin their journey in the capital, as it's home to the only international airport. So assuming that you are departing for your trek from Kathmandu, the starting point of the Annapurna Circuit takes longer to reach than that of the Everest Base Camp trek. Those going or returning from the EBC Trek only require a short 25-minute flight east to the town of Lukla, where your trek conveniently begins and ends. The flight is a highlight in itself. The runway at Lukla Airport is famously short and pitched at a gradient, and the landing approach is flanked by gorges and sheer mountains on either side, making for one of the most spectacular flights anywhere in the world. There is the option to forego the flight to and from Lukla, but this requires 2 full days of rough driving and a 4 to 5 day hike each way, so unsurprisingly it's not very popular. Those beginning the Annapurna Circuit are faced with a few options. One method is to drive directly to the starting point, a journey that takes between 7 to 10 hours depending on traffic. Alternatively, you could fly to the town of Pokhara and drive from there. It gets you there a little quicker, but it's much less economical and it still requires a full day's journey that consists of a 25-minute flight plus a 4 to 5 hour drive. When returning back to Kathmandu from the end of the Annapurna Circuit, you are faced with a combination of flights, jeeps or buses depending on where your trek actually ends. This can take anywhere between half a day to a full day's journey. However, many people choose to stay some days in beautiful Pokhara to unwind, which breaks up the journey. This is what we offer in our itineraries here at Follow Alice, and from experience with our clients, it's the best way to do it if you have the time. The Annapurna Circuit is a large loop that takes you through the mountains of the Annapurna Massif. It ranges from 160 to 230 kilometers. The longer route is the part that was popularized in the 1970s, taking around 19 days to complete. However, nowadays, many opt to trek just the middle portion of it, a journey of 160 kilometers that can be completed in 11 to 12 days. The Everest Base Camp Trek is a linear journey that takes you through the mountains of the Khumbu region and into the shadow of Mount Everest. Linear meaning that you take the same path there and back. It has a total length of 130 kilometers. and is completed in 10 to 12 days, so it's a little shorter in distance and days than the modernized Annapurna Circuit route. Do note that there are a few variations of each trek beyond what we discussed above. Some take detours or shortcuts, whilst others begin or end in different places. Here at Follow Alice, we have organized abbreviated versions of both of these treks, 2 shorter options that only require 2 weeks vacation total from start to finish. A complete 13-day Annapurna Circuit itinerary that takes in the best preserved, highest, most remote and prettiest portion of the trek, and a complete 12-day Everest base camp trek featuring a soaring helicopter return flight across the Himalayas from base camp back to Lukla. These have been proven quite popular for people who have a limited vacation time from work or who prefer less days hiking on the mountain. Make no mistake about it, both the Annapurna Circuit and the EBC Trek are difficult. For the average person, they will likely push the body and mind to new limits. But both are still very doable. Thousands of people of all ages, experiences, and abilities complete them each year. And if you have reasonable levels of fitness and perseverance, you will be in a great position to succeed. But how do they both compare in difficulty? In short, the EBC Trek is more challenging. But let's look at 2 important factors to explain why. 1. The trail. You can expect dirt footpaths, uneven steps, and loose rocks and gravel for much of both treks. Most days will also feature at least a section or 2 of tough, steep uphill walking or stairs, and in places you'll be hiking along narrow contour paths with steep drops. Overall, however, the paths are a bit gentler and less rugged on Annapurna than on Everest Base Camp Trek. 2. Elevation. It's how quickly you climb to the extreme altitudes and how much time you spend at them that really matters. As you can see, the Everest Base Camp Trek reaches high elevation more quickly and spends considerably more time above 5,000 meters. This means more time in rarefied air, where exerting yourself is far more exhausting. This also increases the chances of developing altitude symptoms, such as headaches and dizziness. The mental and bodily strain of the Everest Base Camp Trek is therefore more than the Annapurna Circuit. By the way, for anyone seeking a more complete look and understanding of trekking in Nepal, we've dropped a link in the description to our Nepal trekking PDF guide. It's completely free and provides a depth and detail of knowledge that we simply cannot cover in a short 20-minute video. From physical preparation, critical safety advice, information on visas and trekking insurance, to a complete packing list. We've popped the link in the description for those of you interested. We hope it can help. The Annapurna Circuit is more affordable than the Everest Base Camp Trek. Daily living costs, which include accommodation, food and drink, are around 30% less, equating to around $5 to $10 less per day. The journey to the start of Annapurna Circuit can also be made at a fraction of the cost, where a bus or jeep can be taken as opposed to a flight, saving a few $100s more. So yes, all in all, you will likely spend a few $100s more on an Everest Base Camp Trek, regardless of whether you trek independently or with an organized tour operator. But unless your budget is very tight, we advise that you focus on picking the trek that is right for you. What kind of challenge do you seek? What do you want to experience? Just getting to Nepal will likely cost you thousands of dollars and several days of travel, so keep things in perspective. If you travel with Follow Alice, the math becomes far simpler, because you only have 3 main outlays: your international flights, any trekking gear that you need, and your Follow Alice fee. The rest is taken care of, and you never need to worry about a thing. Peak seasons for both the Everest Base Camp Trek and Annapurna Treks are spring and autumn. This is when weather conditions are the most pleasant, most stable, and the driest. On the Annapurna Circuit, these fall between April and May, the spring, and October and November, autumn. Seasonal changes reach both regions at roughly the same time, with just a slight variation. So on the Everest Base Camp trek, this falls between late March to mid-May, the spring, and between late September to November, autumn. Each peak season has different perks and drawbacks. Spring, for instance, offers beautiful flowers and the opportunity to see Everest Base Camp alive with activity, but there can be a bit of a haze at times. Autumn, on the other hand, offers steadier, warmer weather and better visibility, but you don't have the spring flowers and fresh greenery along the lower half of the trek route, and Everest Base Camp will be totally deserted. So what about the other seasons? In theory, you can trek at any time as the trails remain open year-round. However, very few people choose to climb in the wet summer monsoon and coldest winter months. The heavy rains of the monsoon are dangerous and create risks of landslides and slippery trails, not to mention that it's not that fun to be walking in the rain for hours on end. In the depths of winter, temperatures often reach -20 degrees at night or colder, and you need to contend with the growing risk of snow or blizzards blocking your journey forward. It's not uncommon to be stuck for several days or longer waiting for sections of the trail to reopen. We personally only recommend the harsher winter months if you are a highly experienced mountain trekker. We do not recommend the summer. For most people, you really can't go wrong with either one, and we really mean it. Despite their differences, they have much more in common than they are different. It's a tricky question to answer cleanly, but we realize that you all seek answers. And there are a few instances where we think you could make a good argument for one over the other. We think the Annapurna Circuit could better suit complete newcomers to high altitude trekking. It is a little less challenging overall and would be a softer introduction to the sport. That's not to say that the EBC Trek isn't beginner friendly. It is. No technical expertise or trekking experience is required for either trek, but the EBC does pose more of an obstacle for first timers. We also believe that Annapurna Circuit could appeal more to travelers who highly value variety. There's a vibrant mix of landscapes and local culture that you don't quite get on Everest. And finally, if your budget is very tight, the Annapurna Circuit is likely your best bet. It is cheaper and will save you a few $100. It has more flexibility and room to cut costs too. So what about Everest Base Camp? Well, if you are thrilled by extremes and bucket list experiences, the Everest Base Camp trek is hard to beat. Few people can say they've come face to face with Earth's highest mountain, and peering across at Mount Everest from the windswept peak of Kilimanjaro has to be one of the world's most iconic mountaineering experiences, period. We also think that the Everest Base Camp trek could appeal better to anyone seeking to push their boundaries just a little further, or those who possess some prior trekking experience. We feel that it could better satisfy that pursuit of adrenaline and thirst for a challenge. This is the spiritual home of extreme mountaineering after all. But as we say, you really can't go wrong with either. You're going to have the experience of a lifetime, we promise. So there you have it. Are you aware that Follow Alice organizes treks to Everest Base Camp and the Annapurna Circuit? Every year we take hundreds of happy trekkers there and back, and we're extremely proud of the wonderful feedback we continue to receive. If you're up for the adventure, feel free to check out our website link in the description to take a peek at our departure dates and itineraries. And if you like, our friendly team are always on hand to discuss and offer their advice and expertise for a trip. We're here to help. If you like this video, please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe for more content like this one. Your love and support ensures that we can continue to make more informative travel content videos. Thanks very much and safe travels, everyone.